That brings me on to another question, which is a lot of the time when people are migrating to Tableau Cloud, they are one of the key topics we talk about is data security, compliance, SCREMS too, so data residency and what have you. We've thought quite hard about this. So in Europe, we have like an EU pod in Ireland. We also have a pod in the UK now that they've left the EU. So we can maintain data residency within those two markets. And we've also recently added bring your own encryption key to Tableau Cloud so that we can make sure that, you know, only you can access your content inside the site, and you can encrypt your extracts with the key that you provide. But what sort of concerns have you seen with using TabMove, and how have you thought about data security and compliance?
Good question again. I guess here, what we're trying to do with TabMove is we really just want to move the content to Tableau Cloud. So let's try and follow suit with what's happening in Tableau Cloud, with that data residency, the way it's implemented, with encryption where it's necessary. And as long as we follow what is implemented in Tableau Cloud, we should be okay. But of course, well, TabMove is the bridge between Tableau Server and Tableau Cloud. So at some point, we've seen the local copy, the content and the data is going to sit there, and that needs to be accounted for as well. So we have some flexibility in how we approach the TabMove migration. And this was touched upon earlier, I think. We mentioned it can be run from wherever it needs to be run. It can be a workstation like my laptop, but I think that is the least preferred of choices. Instead, it can run on a physical or virtual machine within the client's network, if that is where we want the transfer to happen, the local copy to instantiate, or a requirement would be that it is part of their VPC, in which case that is where we'll set up the virtual machine on which TabMove runs. So following suit there and remaining as close as possible to what is already being done at the client and with Tableau Cloud, I guess, is how we mostly try to address the residency of the data and whether it has to be encrypted, because that is then all still within the hands of the customer. Typically, if we use a VM of theirs, what they do is they grant us access just for the migration endeavor. And once that's done, access is revoked, and they've retained control throughout all times, because they could have just, you know, cut it off whenever it was necessary.
So TabMove is completely out of band. So after the migration, that temporary server can be decommissioned. So presumably you retain the audit logs in the target environment. So all of those remain after we've uninstalled TabMove, so people can see the before and after picture from that point. Yeah.
It's interesting to keep those indeed, because the way we do this, by the way, I haven't talked about the human aspect much, but we work quite closely with the teams who manage Tableau to go through the run reports and interpret them in the way that it has to be interpreted. I know how TabMove functions, and I can tell them why a certain error pops up, but they can tell me, related to connectivity, for example, what's going on with those credentials that we need to patch. So that we do during the migration, but it's worth keeping that track record, as you say, because while we do that during the migration, there's a very good chance that after 3 weeks, after 3 months, something does still come up, however diligent we have been. So we do need to keep track of that. So that does remain there for as long as it needs to. Also, obviously, still in control of the customer, because they can do with that workbook and it's extract what they want. But that is one piece we do try to keep in place. Yes.
Okay. Just to wrap up on TabMove, I did see a couple of questions came in on the chat about the local copy that TabMove is storing. I think the question was, that's something like a TS back file. I don't think it is a TS back file. I think you're storing data in a much more granular way. So you're storing like the those JSON files contain the dumps of the user structure and the folder structure and all of that, so that you can adjust them in flight. Whereas if we were to use like a backup and restore, you wouldn't be able to change the structure in sight. So you're storing in a very granular format so that we can do all that restructuring in flight. Is that right?
Correct. Yes. I think the question was being asked as we were approaching the topic. So,
sure.
But I think your summary is excellent. So that is what it comes down to. Yes.
Okay. And now, just before we wrap up, you've landed in the cloud, and you want to build like a big data community. What sort of ongoing support does Biztory offer in terms of helping people to optimize their cloud deployment and helping to roll out community, and even doing things like external analytics? What sort of things are you doing to help your customers?
Yeah, so the migration is just a means to an end, I guess, indeed. So you landed in the cloud, and ideally you're now ready and already busy implementing new data governance, rethinking self-service on your environment. And I guess the first involvement of Biztory is helping support those steps, like saying, okay, we have seen a multitude of environments. We've seen how clients apply governance, the blueprint. So we'll help you do that while someone's busy working on the migration. And the two, of course, will connect and ensure that all of that is being set up in that appropriate way. But then going forward, indeed, you've unlocked more possibilities, ideally. And you've mentioned specifically embedding. That is one of the things that can be done more easily, I think, in cloud, because they, for example, released connected apps, the new way of embedding for cloud before they did for server. So with that, what we would do as Biztory is, you've got this opportunity to embed. You have your clients that you want to give access to this dashboard. Here is what that could look like. And we have services to discuss the whole setup and perform that whole setup to embed your dashboards into a portal, into an application. And we call those labs. So it's really a really, really big workshop where we take you through the whole process of designing and implementing Tableau in your portal. It could be that. Completely on the other side of the scope would be, okay, we have our analysts and we're now running in this self-service mode. We need to ramp up their skills, because while they know their data very well, they're still rather new to Tableau, and they've just been giving the keys to the kingdom. Well, training, obviously, these analysts to use either an explorer role with web authoring or a creator role where they are more of a data curator. You know, those trainings would be delivered as a follow-up as well, typically.
Okay, so most people, when they migrate into Tableau Cloud, they're also doing that with a view to increasing the percentage of their employees that can self-serve answers, so that they have wider data take up across the organization. So I think